Welcome to Man's Search for Meaning. The following conversation is with Cari Merriam. Cari Merriam is a transformational thought leader on a mission to empower, inspire, and accelerate spiritual awakening. She is an international yoga and meditation teacher, breathwork healer, and spiritual coach with over 14 years and 10,000 hours of facilitation and training. In 2023, she established the Dynamic Healing Method, a groundbreaking approach designed to revolutionize the coaching industry. This method is committed to elevating the standard of coaching by infusing greater integrity and comprehensive trauma-informed training. Cari is an amazing coach and a wonderful friend, and the conversation we had was incredible as it was thought-provoking. We talked dating, spirituality, masculine and feminine energies, personal development, and a little bit about who Cari is and what led her on her path. I had an amazing time talking to Cari, and I'm honored that such a person is ready and willing to share her amazing thoughts with the world. All right, friends, let's dive into it. All right, so hi, Cari. How you doing?
Hi, Ari. I'm good, love.
I'm really happy that we're doing this. I'm really happy.
Me too.
I mean, yeah, I mean, this is one of the first episodes that I'm recording, and you know, the good thing about this is that we're friends and we kind of know each other, and I was really interested to pick your brain for like 90 minutes, and we don't really get these opportunities when we're in Berlin and we're all so busy, and now we kind of get that opportunity.
Yeah, and our spouses are with us, and you and I are just having a conversation, and they're like, can we be a part of the conversation? So now we're going to do that today.
Yeah, I love that. I love it. How are you doing? What are you doing these days?
I'm doing good. I am working on some back-end components of my business, and I'm enjoying the transition to fall. Lots of sauna, lots of steam room, lots of snuggle time and tea. And just really supporting my husband right now. He's going through such a big transition, and he's running his first marathon. So I feel like,
Right.
Yeah.
Right, he's running his first marathon. He's also like,
Yeah.
I think he's quitting his job and he's doing like...
I don't know if we can like officially say that. I don't know when this episode will be out. So let's
no one
wait
knows
and see.
officially who's your husband.
That's true. That's true. But he did quit his job.
Yeah.
He already did that last week. So it's been like a really, really big shifts for him, big changes.
I can imagine that
Yeah.
being married to you and being in a corporate job, and it's like, and seeing you do what you do and like, say the things that you do and live the life the way that you do, you can't help but just not want that 9 to 5 and just, want to live your true passion, like what it is that you really want to do. Like, is that the case with you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. Like, I truly feel like there's so many people that can find their passion in the corporate world and can feel so nourished by the 9 to 5. And the funny part that you said is like being in relationship to you. I'm going to challenge every single structure and condition of my husband's reality. And he signed up for that. I mean, he married me. So there's also a desire to understand and break down his own walls of limitation that he's built as well. I always say, like, my husband has to be the strongest human being on the planet because he decided to marry me. And I am a very big mirror for many men. And prior to being in relationship to my husband, most men just crumbled in my presence. And he's like so firm in the identity of himself. And so now that he's shifting the identity of who he is, I'm curious to see what will transmute in our relationship, because there's going to have to be dynamics that shift and evolve for sure.
I love that you said that you mentioned this whole thing about men who crumbled in your presence, because this is something that I really wanted to ask you, because one of the things that, I work on, I help men with relationships and all of that. And the relationship between the masculine and the feminine is something that I'm super passionate about and I'm always like curious about. And for me, it's like when I think about, a woman in a man's life, a lot of it is to reflect the world to him as it is. This is why so many women like challenge their men to become better, to see their faults. And like a lesser man, to some extent, when his woman challenges him, is like being like overprotective or defensive, or I don't know, try to make excuses or runs away from it. Where a man who is like some sort of in comfort with his masculine is like they're sitting with open arms, like, yes, give it to me, because he sees the potential of it. Like a woman becomes his muse by doing that. So I really kind of, when I'm talking about your husband, and I'm not going to mention his name because we're not going to, I always saw him as someone who is like very, very just chilled. Like very, very happy with receiving your feminine challenge, or your feminine chaos, or your feminine, like, however you want to call it.
I would definitely say the same. I mean, when I look at your partner as well, I feel like our partners are very similar, which is probably good because you and I are very similar in the sense that we're very outspoken and we want to talk about things and we want to go there. And so to have a partner that is able to absorb that in many ways, but bring in their own magic and their own mystery and their own guidance and their own reflection is huge. And I always say the quickest way to knowing yourself and to really awakening spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically is to get into sacred partnership and become an entrepreneur.
I can't agree more.
Do you want to blow up your world? Step
Sure.
into the path of entrepreneurship and get into partnership, like really committed partnership, where we're talking about marriage or engagement, like committed, because then all of a sudden that's where the work happens. And what's so incredible about my husband versus all of the men that I dated before is that two things happen. Number one, I did a lot of work prior to or after my past relationships, prior to my marriage, to understand how to not cut men down, but instead use my voice as a channel to be the muse versus use my voice as a channel to be the manipulator. And that was a huge path of understanding within myself and understanding what divine masculinity truly is and how that's presented in a masculine body or a male identifying body and vice versa. So when I came across my husband, who's very securely attached, very centered within himself, within his identity, within his masculine frame, he's able to then hold my projections and not make it about him. But that's also through how I communicate. So it's yes and.
Yeah, it seems like there's this. Well, there's two things that you mentioned that I really liked. Like the first thing is that you mentioned that you did the work on yourself first. That even if he was the man he is, and you didn't do the work on yourself, whatever it is that you guys have going on that is working for you wouldn't have worked, right? Because you would sabotage that relationship for whatever reason, or he would not be able to receive that version of yourself that hasn't worked on itself. And the second thing that I really like that you talked about, and I want to follow through on that, is that you mentioned kind of like these two polars of the feminine, right? You mentioned that there is the side that is the destroyer, and which is I call it Kali, the goddess of destruction. And on the other side, you have the side that is the how did you call it? The muse, right? Which is more like Shakti, the goddess of play and love and bonding. And I think that, and I'm wondering what you can tell me about this. Like, I'm thinking that for men, like women are by naturally they will shift back and forth between these situations, no matter how an enlightened being a woman is, just because of the nature of the feminine energy that ebbs through the like women, which I like to call it, like you said, male identifying, whatever. I just say that women are the carriers of the torch of the feminine energy, and men are the carriers of the torch of masculine energy. So just because of that, like women often they will shift back and forth from these situations just because it is who they are, and that is fine. That's amazing. And with a man, it's all about like rather trying to be that stable energy and that grounded energy. So it's like it doesn't matter if the woman is there or there. He will be able to stand there and not take it, but rather be with it and contain it and hold it. And I think that this is like this magical dynamic between the masculine and the feminine, because by doing that, I would argue that a man can make any woman feel safe. Not any woman, but a woman who did the work on herself rather feel safe, and they can kind of like bounce back off each other, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you were saying about Kali and Shiva, and I wanted to add to that because I feel often in the spiritual world, Kali gets a bad rap, and the language that I use is manipulator or destroyer. So we have to look at all of these archetypes that also have a shadow side. I'm more connected to my Kali, to burning that which is no longer in alignment in the relationship down. And if I didn't have an understanding of how to best embody that archetype, it could very much go into the shadow of emasculating my man or mothering my man or trying to control through destruction. Versus the purity and truth of Kali is I need to destroy everything from a rebirthing process that's not in our highest alignment, that's not in our highest component of truth, our highest standard of truth. And the same comes with Shakti, this life force, this expansion energy. There's also a shadow side of that as well that can feel stagnant and dormant and shut down and so internalized, like almost analysis paralysis, like going so within that there's a lack of expression, there's a lack of playfulness, there's a lack of movement, essentially. So where we are identified within the archetypes, but also where we're really communicating from is so essential, because that's going to influence the relationship on both sides. Same with men, right? And we're constantly, relationships we're constantly mirroring each other's stuff. So we can bring it into the highest alignment, so we can bring it into the highest vibration. But both of us have to be willing to do that, and both of us have to have the desire to want that.
That's very true. That's very true. The desire to want that and the willingness to do that is something, and like going through this, like, well, discomfort of doing that is often something that is really, really problematic for a lot of people, because today I think that it's almost like people think that the aim of life is to be happy. Yeah. And then it's like, if I'm not happy, then something is wrong. If I'm not happy, then the relationship is not the relationship that I need to be in. This person is not the person I need to be with. But then it's like what you said, there's like, when you put commitment, where it's like you take happiness out of the equation. It's like in sickness and in health, I'm going to be with you whether I'm happy or not, because if I'm not happy, we can work on this. This is something that we can do. So where do you draw the line? Here's a question that I have. Where do you draw the line? Because clearly there is also this type of person who will say something like, well, you're with me in sickness and in health, therefore I can throw all of my shit on you and you have to be there and you have to take it, because if not, you don't love me. So where do you draw the line here?
Again, it comes down to communication. There's a difference of, can I share with you what I'm feeling and what's moving through me, versus you're the issue and I need you to create a solution for me, right? One's empowered and one is rescue me. One is coming from a place of, I feel safe to express what's happening in my internal world. And I'm asking you to create even a safer container for me to move through this somatically, emotionally, mentally, as a partner, as that divine dance. Or again, you need to fix it for me. I need you to provide the solution, or I just need you to be the punching bag. And this is where conscious coupling is so important, and consciously continuing to do your own work, because there are many times where my husband doesn't have the capacity to deal with me going through a tantrum. Literally a tantrum. Yeah. So it's my responsibility to go to tell him, like, hey, I'm triggered right now. I'm not in the place to be emotionally regulated to have a conversation. Like, I need space. And that's sometimes it's like, I need space. That's it. Like, that's as conscious as I can be. I'm like, don't touch me. I need space. And so that's my cue to shut the door, come in here, and literally have a tantrum, move the energy, disperse some of the energy through my body, get myself back to a regulated state, so then we can have a deeper conversation where I can soften and not be in a fight or flight perspective in my nervous system, which will automatically put me on a defense.
And I love that you're saying that, because here's the thing. It's really easy to say things should be in a certain way or should be in a certain frequency. Like, for example, I should not ever be triggered, and if I'm triggered, there is something off. Or I should always be in control. Or if I'm not in control, then I did something wrong, spiritually speaking. And what I hear you saying, and I love that, and I think it's really important to say, is that sometimes, more often than not, you will be triggered, and you have no clue what the fuck is going on. You're just angry and pissed and triggered, and you just want to slap the person in front of you for no apparent reason. And what matters is not that you calm down. What matters is that you know how to communicate that this is the situation. It's like, listen, right now I'm fucking triggered. I want to kill you. Here's what I need. I need space. I need to leave. I need that. I need this. We'll talk about it in a second. Right?
It's key, because I feel like so many of us are trying to create resolution in a dysregulated nervous system state. And we can't get to safety from dysregulation. It's our job to bring ourselves back to rest and digest, to bring ourselves back to, like, I'm safe, to actually communicate and go to the deeper root of what's unfolding, to be able to express our feelings versus I need to fight or run away. And you'll start to notice too, like, when my husband and I are disconnected, we're trying to come back to connection. And he has a trauma response to get back to connection. And my trauma response to get back to connection is very different. His way to rebuild connection is intimacy and physical touch. And my way to build connection is space and alone time.
That must be fun.
It's an interesting dance. He's like, can I hug you now? And I'm like, no, like, absolutely not. I'm not there yet. And so that comes from my own stuff. And so that's my path to, like, soften into intimacy and soften into letting a man physically touch me, which again comes from my own experiences around trauma and sexual abuse and, like, all of these things. And for him, like, that's his return to connection. Like, he has to come back to snuggles, physical touch. Like, that's how he feels like the relationship is moving into repair. So if we don't have a clear understanding of our own trauma responses and how we cope, like how we respond to the other side of that dysregulation, the relationship would have imploded a long time ago.
I hear you so much. And that actually brings up something that, like what you just said. I'm just thinking about it. And you said that you had a certain journey that brought you to the place that you're in today. Like, being a coach is not something that anybody chooses to do. There's a certain, I would say as a coach, that there is a certain calling to it. And let's say a lot of coaches have a seriously fucked up past. So
Most of us.
yeah. So what was it like for you in the life before you were a coach? And what was the moment that rather shifted that got you out of samsara, so to speak? That moment that got you out of the place that you were like, wherever it is that you were, and deciding to take a new path.
I love the coaches that go like, oh, here's my one origin story, or here's my spiritual awakening story. It was like one thing shifted. That is not the truth in my reality.
It's a marketing tool.
Yeah, it's a marketing tool. Like, I don't know who was like, oh, I had this one incident and like, bam, I'm awakened. No, I've been in this industry for 15 years. It has been moment after moment after letting my life crumble and rebuilding it for the last 15 years. And every single moment got me here, and every moment I needed to take. And so 15 years ago, I had no idea who I was. I was very much living in the matrix. I was very disconnected from myself. At a very young age, I was diagnosed with bipolar, anxiety disorder. Later, that was diagnosed with ADHD. And then even later, that was diagnosed with odd ADHD, so autism and ADHD. But at a young age, I didn't understand what any of those things meant. And I had a lot of trauma in my youth and in my early 20s, specifically sexual abuse trauma. So all of these things, my only way to survive was through alcohol and cocaine. Like, this was literally my only way to survive. But it took one person to plant the seed of yoga, and that life could be different. It was one conversation that then...
So there was one moment.
Well, I guess there was an origin moment, which was with whiskey, Jameson, and a joint, which is hilarious.
Is that the dude, Jameson?
No, Jameson is a whiskey.
Yeah, I know. But
Yeah.
I wonder if that's the guy who shifted your mind, you know?
No, I don't speak her name anymore because she was always like, can you please stop telling my origin story? Like, it's not mine. I don't want to be the angel in your story. So I want to honor that for her.
Okay, sure.
But yeah, it was one conversation that I remember. I'm sure that there was other moments leading up to that. And then what's interesting is, like, it wasn't that one conversation and I made change. It was that one conversation that, like, I thought I was at rock bottom, but that one conversation took me deeper into rock bottom. And I was in a really abusive relationship, engaged to get married. Again, it was like all of these things till eventually, maybe after that conversation, a year or two later, I was like, if I don't get out of New York City, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And I asked myself one question: where's the happiest I've ever been? So I was chasing happiness. That was my path to get to where I am. And it was on my snowboard, so I packed all my stuff. I moved to Colorado. I started working at a strip club, which you probably don't know about me. I was bartending. I was not stripping. But I was literally bartending, looking at titties during the day, talking to old men. That funded my first yoga teacher training. This was 2009. And then that path of, like, yoga was my therapy. I never went to rehab. Yoga was my rehab. And I remember going into my first yoga class and crying in Shavasana. I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, I don't cry. I don't show people my emotions. I show people one emotion: crazy or angry. Like, that was my emotional spectrum. And so again, it was just unfolding after someone would invite me to go somewhere, and that would plant a new seed. Like breathwork 10 years ago, I was the same person, by the way. It was like, come to New Mexico, meet my teacher. And then that planted a different seed, which then created a ripple, which also brought me even deeper, because my relationship at this time in my 20s, the person I thought I was going to marry, told me that I was like in a cult. Pretty much he was like, you're in a breathwork cult. Breathwork wasn't a thing back then. Get out of the cult. Like, so that creates such fragmentation in the relationship. So that relationship dissolved. And then that brought me to Bali, that brought me to Egypt, that brought me to traveling the world, that brought me to calling in another narcissist partner, that brought me to bankruptcy and business, that like brought me to here, you know? It's been a wild ride, Ari. Like I've lived a lot of life in the 40 years I've been on this planet, and I'm just getting started.
I hear you.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like, and I can relate to my experience a lot. It's almost like you can live a life of cynicism, bring you to a point of this kind of like a nihilistic existence, deep, dark, nihilistic existence that is just completely deprived of love and is all full of victim and anger and and one moment of like truth, of like this kind of like that moment of shavasana, you know, one moment of truth can just like pierce through all the fucking poison, and it just pierces through your heart. It's like, I watched this reality show the other day called Outlast, and it's like this reality show about, you know, they take a bunch of people, they put them in the middle of Alaska, and the only rule is you have to be in a group to win, and they do like survival stuff, whatever, and they have all kinds of personalities there. There was this dude there who was like very, very like how would you say, like a very ego person. Like the ego is very strong with this one, you know, like very like, you do what I say, and I need to da 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 da. And there was this other person there who was just like a complete other type of person, like this kind of like a very cool guy, like just chill, just like, yeah, I just love Jesus, man. It's all good, you know, like really like that kind of person. And there was this moment that they interviewed the guy who was like the more rigid dude. And he was just like, he was talking about like how he watches the other guy. And he's like, you know, I can't understand it sometimes, how people are just so happy. And then when he said that, he just started crying and he just started tearing up. And in my eyes, it was like, yes, because you saw that truth, you saw that beauty, you saw that evidence that there is something beyond the pain, the cynicism, the victim, the dark, and I just think that is it's something that every person has, and it just takes a moment to see it. And then it takes, like you say, it's like a constant choice to not kind of, you know, how does it say, like chase that unicorn, but rather more like to know that it's there and walk life knowing that this thing is there. So anyway, what made you like, just shifting topics, what made you decide, like after you've gone through this journey, because some people just go through a certain journey, you know, they suffer, they understand the source of the suffering, rather they choose not to do it, and then just continue their life as a programmer, you know. What made you decide to actually go and teach that stuff to other people?
I don't know if it was a decision, more as like, I don't really have another choice. Like I've always been a believer that there's breadcrumbs of bliss. And I've lived my life and built my life in a way that I simply need to follow the next breadcrumb of bliss.
Love that.
I don't have to have all of the answers. There's some days that I'm like, I really wish I had all the answers. And I'm like, do I really know? I don't want to know all of the answers. That would be such a boring book.
Yeah.
You know? And when I'm able to shift my perspective on my past and go, I'm writing a book of a lifetime. And the character is extraordinary. And she's here to change the game. And if I can see myself in that way as the author, as the main character, and also the director, but, and this is huge, not have to be the full creator.
there's an element of participation there, right?
Yes, like this
you're
idea that I'm
participating
fully creating is like, no, that's exhausting.
Right.
God's doing that. Like,
yeah, it's like you're participating in the creation of your life. You know, you're not let's say you're not the origin force, but you're like, oh, hello, Simba. For those of you who are listening in audio, we're seeing Simba, who's Carrie's dog, who's a very, very cute dog, who likes to sometimes lick my feet, which is odd. But he's a very cute dog.
I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, I'm just going to come back to breadcrumbs of bliss. How I got to where I am is even in the darkest moments when I had no idea who I was, I simply followed the first breadcrumb of bliss. I asked myself, where do I feel the happiest? That's it. Like, where do I feel the most blissful? And the answer to that was on my snowboard. It's still my go-to, like, little kid. This brings me so much joy. So I'm like, okay, Colorado, moving to Colorado. And then everything else kind of fell in place. And when it came to facilitating and coaching, I was a student for many years under the impression within myself that I'm not meant to be a teacher. But every time I taught, it was so blissful. Every time I got an opportunity to be on stage, it was so blissful. Having this conversation is so blissful. And therefore, if I can make my decisions around bliss, now you can't fully do that as an entrepreneur. There's other responsibilities that aren't so blissful, but
Sure.
Then I'm on the right path. And that's all I need to know, that I'm in alignment and on the right path, and I give a lot up to God.
You know, that's
I
kind of
don't
like
need to steer the ship anymore.
That's kind of like what drove me to do this podcast, to be fair, because I thought to myself, like, you know, as a person what do I like? You know, what do I love? I love having deep conversations with amazing people. I love just talking. I love that shit. What I don't like is doing social media posts. What I don't like is being on Instagram. I don't like that shit. But talking to people, that's something that I can fucking do that for a living. You know, and this is exactly what you're talking about, like following this bliss. This is exactly why I couldn't ever carry a 9-to-5 job. I did it for 6 months. I wanted to die. I wanted to die. And I remember the moment that I was fired, and I didn't quit. I was fired because one colleague heard me say that I only do this job because I need the money or for the visa or for whatever. She ratted me out to the boss, and the boss fired me. And I remember the moment leaving there, being in the train, feeling like I didn't have any idea where I'm going to make money, but I was there being like, oh my God, my soul is free. My soul is free. I will never do that shit again. I will never be that slave again. And because I have the opportunity to follow my bliss. Yeah. And
again, like, I love that it's so strong for you, like this, like, oh my gosh, I felt like a slave. But I truly, like, I was so blissful in my corporate job. I was so blissful.
And what did you do in a corporate job?
So I ran 176 yoga studios across the nation, and as the national programming manager and sales director for 176 yoga studios.
Sounds like a lot of responsibility.
It was a lot of responsibility, and I didn't really know what I was doing, and I did a lot of things wrong, but I was so blissful being able to have conversations, inspire people, transform their lives, feel like I was a part of something that was so near and dear to my heart. That yoga teacher training, again, I never went to rehab. It was really a pivotal life shift for me, the first yoga teacher training I did. And again, back in 2009, we had to do anatomy, and we had to do cadaver labs and like dissect dead people. Like, I don't know what happened to the watered down yoga teacher trainings that there are now, but back in the day, they were not watered down. They were extremely in depth. And so I really loved my corporate job until I didn't, right? Until I was like, okay, what's next? But I do believe that there are incredible corporate jobs out there that will inspire you, where you're connected to the mission, where you can access that bliss, and that might be a part of someone's path, even if they're a coach and they go back and forth. Like,
Yeah,
there's bliss to be had everywhere.
I think when you say bliss, I think a synonym to that bliss would be meaning, right? Because if you have like the corporate job is not the problem, right? The job, the 9 to 5, whatever, that's not the problem. The problem is if what you are doing is meaningful or meaningless to you.
I love that.
And I think this is where people can find meaning in a 9 to 5 job. People can find meaning in working in a freaking kiosk if they like to. And where I was working, let's not say the name of the company, but I think their partner is Lucifer. And there was no meaning in that job. I was really trying hard to find meaning because I'm kind of like this person who tries to find meaning in everything they do. But that one had no meaning to me, and this is why it was just so blissful to get rid of it. So I want to shift back with you for a second for the masculine and feminine, because I had like I wanted to open with you a topic that we kind of talked about before, which is like, powerful women, strong men, whatever. And I want to ask you a question. Why do you think men are so afraid from powerful women? And how does that connect to a term that I hear you speak about a lot? Because for those of you who don't know, Carrie is my fiance's, my partner's coach. So I have a lot of Carrie in my life, even in moments that I didn't know that I'm going to have Carrie in my life, but I have Carrie in my life there as well. So again, why do men afraid of powerful women, and how does that connect to prince energies versus king energies and princess energies versus queen energies?
I love this question. So I'm going to just shift powerful women to empowered women. And first, let's talk about what an empowered woman is and what a disempowered woman is. Because all women have the ability to become empowered, aka become powerful women. But again, so much of our internal world is dictating our behavior and our experience of life. So how we show up in relationship, how we respond in relationship, how we react to things that are unfolding in our day-to-day life. So an empowered woman feels like she has choices, and she's able to clearly express her needs, her desires, and her feelings.
Which is a masculine aspect, the ability to clearly express, right?
Tell me more. Why do you believe that?
Okay. Well, I think that any capacity within you, any side of a personality that is in its character, is clear and concise and is logical, rather, is masculine in its nature.
Yes, penetrating.
Right. I like to always use the analogy of the yin and yang, where a woman would be the black dragon with a white eye. It's mostly feminine, but there is some masculine elements in it. Otherwise, a woman wouldn't have any boundaries or logic or reason. For example, a woman who is fully in that black dragon energy without the white won't be able to express herself clearly, won't be able to carry a steady argument, won't be able to carry a steady job. So like a woman who is balanced is like in this flow and in this emotion and in this place of like, femininity and chaos and all of that, and knows how to say that she's in that place. And that's that white dot.
Yeah.
This is what I mean.
Okay, I love that. It's always good to hear versus just be like, that's masculine, right? I can really understand why you say that and why you believe that. So let me say it in a different way. An empowered woman she feels like she has choices, and she's able to use her voice in a way that expresses her needs, her desires, and her feelings. It doesn't necessarily have to be like clear and directive, but she feels like she has a voice. Okay? Now, a lot of what empowerment is, when we talk about a female body, is a clear understanding that she has an inner king as well as an inner queen. And her establishment of her inner king makes her feel safe to be able to express. So this is what I mean from a masculine component. Like, she feels so solid in her own masculinity through her own clarity and understanding of who she is as well, that she can allow the expression of femininity to be transmitted out.
I love that. I love that. And how would it look like if you said like this inner king, right? How would it look like if instead of an inner king, she had an inner prince?
Ooh. There's many different ways that this can show up, but very often, from a choice perspective, the prince doesn't believe that she has any choices. So just if we look at a choice perspective, so if she's operating from an inner prince versus an inner king, she believes that she's stuck in where she is in life because there is a lack of choices.
Would it be the energy of nobody loves me?
It could be. There's definitely a rescue element that comes through, but that's not necessarily from the inner prince. The inner prince is trying to come to the rescue of the inner princess.
Explain that to me.
Let's look at behavioral components, because I think that's easy. So how these behaviorals show up, whether they have an inner princess or an inner prince, it shows up in a variety of different ways, and I'll look at the lens of romantic partnership for this specific example. So say that a client of mine comes to me and feels like she's trapped in the relationship, like she has no other choices. If there is a feeling of trapped, I don't have any other choices, I can't leave, but I don't want to stay. Like that's like the idea that I don't have choices, right? There's no empowerment there. There's disempowerment.
Lose-lose.
It's a lose-lose no matter what. Like, there's no way I can leave. There's no other man out there that will love me. Like, this is all I have. And I don't have the financial well-being to leave. And like, I don't have any choices, Carrie, right? That's the inner prince. But the inner princess is the voice that feels like a victim to their circumstance.
So the inner prince is saying, I don't have any choice. The inner princess is the one that is reacting to that voice that says I don't have any choice and feels like she's screwed.
Yeah, she feels like she's a victim. And so it gets perpetuated in this cycle of like, I need to rescue myself. I need to rescue myself. I need to rescue myself. So it constantly feels like an internal battle. Like, I'm a victim, come and rescue me, when nothing is actually changing behaviorally. So it's a loop. Like, I don't have any choices. You know, this life is stacking all these circumstances against me. I can't really take action. Like, it almost is like I'm in freeze. I'm in procrastination. This is often procrastination.
And then essentially what you're saying is that like that there is a loop in a sense that the prince is reacting to the princess, who's reacting to the prince, who's reacting to the princess. And if, let's say, one side realizes, okay, I'm now king or I am now queen, then they can like maybe pull the other side to it by reacting differently, and then the cycle is broken, right?
Yes, and I truly believe we have to start with the masculine in both men and women.
Okay, I see why you would say that. I would see why you would say that. Because the masculine is the consciousness component. This is
the masculine is the safety. It's the container.
Okay.
It's the anchoring. It's the root chakra. We have to start at the root.
I hear you. I mean, what I see here is that tell me if that like goes in line with the line of thought that you have, that let's say that anything, in order to be sort of processed and sort of to reach a certain understanding of, and to a point that it's actually applicable in your life has to go through the lens of understanding it intellectually. Not saying that intellectually is the full scope of understanding, just saying that it's a let's say it's a basic condition that has to exist if something needs to be applied in your life. So,
What's a basic condition? The intellectual component of something?
like grasping something intellectually or grasping part of something intellectually. Because before you bring it into your consciousness, let's say, for example, like this. If you have a hidden talent to play the cello.
Our conversation is going.
No, it's the same place. Stay with me
Okay.
here. Yeah? If you have a hidden talent to play the cello and
Okay.
you don't know that you have this talent, you will never live up to the talent because you don't go and study cello or go and take a cello in your hand and start playing it. But it is the knowing that you might have it, you don't know that you do, but you know that maybe, that will get you to the point that you will live up to your, that you might live up to your secret cello endeavors.
So what I feel like you're calling intellectual understanding is what I would call awareness. And awareness can happen outside of the mind, but for most of us, awareness is happening from an intellectual lens.
Okay.
But you can be aware
Outside of the mind, meaning intuitively.
Yeah, in the body,
Yeah,
in
okay.
the emotional world, in the spiritual world, that is beyond the mental world or the mental body.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tell me.
No, go ahead. I don't have anything important to say. Go ahead.
I don't even know where we started this conversation, but I want to come back to like princess and prince and just like very clear behavioral patterns of inner prince behaviors that show up in women. And again, let me just talk from a entrepreneur lens and a romantic lens. So a behavioral pattern that is going to highlight that there's an inner prince dictating the show versus an inner king dictating the show is oftentimes you procrastinate. So you procrastinate when it comes to getting your work out into the world, or you procrastinate or hesitate to have those deep conversations. So you let a lot of things go unsaid in the relationship. Another huge indication behaviorally is that often you can talk a really big game, but you don't actually match up what you're saying. And this is for men as well. You don't match up what you're saying to what you're walking or what you're embodying. So there's a lot of fantasy projections that can happen. And you're either positioning yourself as a fantasy, like you are describing yourself as a female that's different than reality, or you're projecting and seeing the fantasy potentiality in your partner, not the reality of who they are in the moment. So that could be like, oh my God, first date, he's the one. He's the one. Like,
Yeah,
he's
like,
an
how do you know?
entrepreneur. How do you know? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
How
yeah.
do you know? Yeah.
It's like there's
Oftentimes-
like an immature version
Exactly,
of
it's
the
immaturity.
it's like immature logic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can totally see that happening in men too, especially when you said this avoidance pattern.
Yeah.
Where, well, the people who I would call like the nice guys, you know, who would, let's say, lie to their partner and say something they think she wants to hear instead of facing things as they are. Or if you made a mistake, instead of owning up to that mistake, say, yeah, I fucked up, trying to cover for that mistake. Would that be something that's similar to what you're talking about?
I don't necessarily, I think from a female perspective, it's not necessarily the same. And we're also talking about, like, are we speaking about dating or are we speaking about romantic partnership? 'Cause
Romantic
I'm just-
partnerships.
Romantic partnerships. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just looking at from a dating perspective.
Okay.
So how females show up from a dating perspective is often, if they're in their prince energy or princess energy, is very often, again, they will highlight all of the best qualities of themselves. They'll like oversell themselves to be chosen, to be rescued, to be picked. And or they often take men to bed very quickly or as quick as possible. So they lead with their sexual energy to create early attachment to then perpetuate the fantasy. There's a lot of behaviors. And then when that looks like or they'll play an interesting dynamic of games where they'll want to early attach and then they'll kind of lean way back. And so it's this kind of dance of like leaning forward, leaning back. Like, I'm going to give you everything. I'm going to tell you everything about me. I'm going to use my emotionality to hook you in hopes that there can be a connection, right? So when there's an inner prince, there's a lack of safety and security within themselves. And so when it comes to the dance of romantic partnership, they're looking for that fulfillment. They're looking for that safety and structure. And so oftentimes this can show up in codependent patterning where they'll want to attach as quickly as possible. And they will use their mind to make them believe that this is the right partner in order to obtain that attachment and that connection.
So if I was a guy
Yes.
who was in the dating market,
Yes.
which I'm not, but I'm a guy, and you kind of, right now I'm listening to this podcast, I'm listening to Carrie, and I'm like, holy shit, that's the girl I'm dating. What can I as a guy do? Because I really like this girl. You know, she's just a little bit anxiously attached. She's not a terrible person. You know, she's just acting out some of the patterns that you just talked about.
Yeah.
What can I do as a man to express this to her without scaring her away, without hurting her, you know, with being as kind as I want, because I want this thing to continue.
I'm a big believer that if you're a securely attached man, you have a robust funnel of women. Why would you be concerned about scaring this person away? Mm-hmm. Like, how long are you in the dating process that you want to already try to create solution? Like, if you're 3 months into the dating process or even before 6 months and you need to be having this conversation, I would ask why.
Why, from the guy's perspective or from the lady's perspective?
Like, why do you think that's your job or responsibility? I would just end the relationship.
So you're saying it's like you don't need to fix her, or rather that. Okay.
But over communication is key. Like, I don't understand. So the idea that we are having big conversations and it's not fun and light, 0 months to 6 months is wild to me.
I love that you're saying that. So this is great.
That's fucking wild to me.
Right.
If you were having like challenges in your relationship, big challenges prior to 6 months, get out of the relationship.
Yeah, I totally hear you on that. Like, I like to say,
get out.
I like to say in these situations, it's like when you get that kind of stuff, it's like try to approach it with humor. Like if you sense something that you think might be a red flag, but you're not sure, just call it out with humor.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like, all right, let's sit down, we need to have a talk. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't. Love is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
You know, like,
you
hey.
don't have to have a talk before 6 months. Like, literally.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
There are certain guys who were in my coaching sphere who because the thing is that when I work with a lot of guys who are like nice guys, these are guys who don't express boundaries.
Yeah.
They don't do that. And then when you start empowering these men, all of a sudden it's like, fuck yeah, boundaries. Like, I'm going to express my boundaries everywhere. Like, yeah, ha ha, boundaries here, boundaries there, boundaries everywhere. And that's like, you don't need to have a serious conversation about boundaries when you're like 3 months in a relationship. If you hear your woman, if a woman who you're dating, she's not your woman yet, but if a woman who you're dating is crossing your boundaries or testing your boundaries, you can express it playfully, right? You can just make a joke about it. You can make her see that you're not taking this really, really, really seriously. And at the same time, this is sort of something that you don't appreciate.
I love that. I also think it's really important that if you're a man and you continually attract these women that like need you to support them in emotional processing this early on in the relationship, that is a clear indication of something going on with you. And that's a clear indication that there is often, in my opinion, not enough clarity in your communication of what you are looking for and what your standards are. Because let me tell you, I would have saved myself a lot of heartache if on the first date I had with men, they were clear of like, I'm not looking for a relationship. I'm wanting to move into a sexual ship. Like, I'm not a committed person. That's not what I desire. And be super fucking honest with that.
I love that you're saying that. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's like a lot of guys tell me, like, for example, that they're afraid to tell a woman that they're into something that they just want to be like fuck buddies. Where I say like, hey, if that's what you want and you express it like an adult, you let her have the choice. Maybe she wants it and maybe not. And you'll be surprised that some women will say yes to that because they're cool with that. And some
I don't know
women
if they're
will
cool
say
with
no.
it. I would say that women say yes to that because they have a deep wounding around not feeling chosen and not feeling worthy enough. And it comes from an unworthy wound where they believe that they will be the one that is able to change the man and win and be chosen.
Very true. Very true.
Okay. So you have to understand, if you're just looking for that, most likely you're also going to call in women that don't feel fully worthy, and that might create another ripple of drama. But everything changed for me when I made the declaration, I am dating for marriage.
So you're saying that you had the clarity for yourself, and what you would have liked to had from men is clarity from them.
Exactly.
And that would save you a lot of like stress, right?
Yeah. But again, a lot of men weren't in their divine masculine. So we come back to king energy. King energy knows what he wants.
I love that.
And so until I had that internal masculine within myself going, I'm only dating for marriage. Anybody that I don't see marriage material, I'm not going on a second or third date with. I'm not taking them to bed. Because before that, I didn't have that inner clarity. And so I was looking for the fulfillment from the masculine. And so this is where the wounding was happening. I was letting it be up to them to dictate where the relationship went. And that felt so disempowered. And then I would call in men that also weren't in their masculine because we would just highlight each other's wounding.
I love that you're saying this, and there's so many directions that I can take this conversation. I want to take it to a rather simple direction, though, instead of a deeper one. And that would be, you said that for you as a woman who wants, let's say, I think that every guy is aiming for a woman who knows what she wants. Every guy who is like, at least from this audience, there's people who are into more like relationships, they're not into hookup culture. They want a woman who knows what she wants and not just like all willy-nilly, like just lost in life. So you mentioned clarity, which is one thing that a woman of that type would like. What else is a woman who is like relationship oriented? What is important for her to see in a guy? That when she sees, she'll be like, oh, I want to compete for this guy's time. I want to be in this guy's circle rather than, oh, he's just one of those guys.
I love that. So I also want to set the record straight that men think that they choose the woman and the woman chooses. And I also want to set the record straight that when it comes to dating, what I recommend and what so many other coaches in this space recommend is that a woman has a very like full dating funnel of men. So she is dating a lot of men because it's the man's job to stand out amongst that crowd of men. So she is in the receiver space of the relationship, but she also has clear understanding of what she's looking for, what values are important to her, all of the components of what she desires, and she's able to communicate those things. And so what she's looking for in a man, what most of us that are empowered, fully empowered in our choices, in our understanding of who we are, and our clarity and direction of what we want, and our ability to use our voice and express our needs, our desires, our feelings fully, that's empowerment, is a man that has providership.
Providership. Explain that to
Providership.
me. Explain that to me.
So oftentimes we think about a man that can provide, and we often go to financially, but a man can provide in so many other ways. And so often for women that are building their own queendoms, they're not needing a man to provide for them financially. What we need is for men to, in my opinion, provide for us from a spiritual perspective and from an emotional perspective. And both of these things come from the man having such a deep understanding of their inner kingdom that they also understand their own inner queendom. And so that love, that safety, that vibration emanates outward. So we feel like we can rest in response to the masculine's energy.
Okay,
And
so
it's a knowing, it's a body-based knowing, like, I feel safe with this man.
yes. So, like, I want to ask this question for the guys who are saying no, because the psychological statistics show that women marry across and up, and men marry across and down. So, if you're making less money than a woman, which is there is some truth to that, as well as to the data that, for example, domestic violence increases when the woman has more, when the woman is the breadwinner. Yes, there is some truth to that, but essentially, what I hear you saying, and maybe I'm wrong, but like what I hear you saying is like that a woman who makes more money than a guy, it wouldn't be a problem for her as long as this man is a man who is, let's say, who will answer her emotional needs in a way that is masculine and like healthy masculine, and that he's in his element, has deep self-knowledge, has a certain mission, a direction, a purpose, and is grounded in his energies. It wouldn't matter to her if he's making $12,000 a year, as long as he's not being like, clearly, mommy, give me money. It wouldn't matter. Would you agree?
I would agree to an extent.
Sure.
Because there's cycles of life. And again, it comes down to values. And most empowered women are wanting to deepen their relationship to money because they recognize money as feminine, it's circular. And so money is responding to our own masculinity as well. So I would want if there's a cycle where my husband is making less, which might go into right now, that's okay because I know he's not staying there.
And it's not about the money. We're stating that it's not about the money.
Exactly.
It's more about the drive of your husband to be in that masculine energy and fulfill himself and go and penetrate the world with his masculine energy.
That's to me providership.
Yeah.
That's leadership. And again, you don't have to just provide financially. That can be a part of it. I think a lot of women are looking for that in the early stages.
Yeah.
But you don't have to lean on that. When my husband and I first started dating, I had just bankrupted a business and he was so poor. We were both so poor. But he would provide for me in different ways. Perfect example, we went to go into a park on one of our first dates. And so how he provided for me was he went out of his way to meet me at the first train station, to take me and hold my hand to the next train station. And even to get on the first train station, he went out of his way to send me all of the directions, all of the different maps, all of the ways that...
That's so cute.
He is, he's so cute. He was doing this for my 40th birthday. Like, there's ways that he provides. He goes out of his way to over communicate and make sure people feel safe in his presence and his leadership. And
I love that you said leadership, because what he's doing, by doing that, he leads. And how much does that cost him? $0. $0. All the people who think they have to take her to a fancy restaurant and they have to impress her with a car or with this, that's fucking bullshit. This is what you're talking about, this providership energy, right? It doesn't cost you anything to pick her up from the train station and take her to a nice walk, or I don't know, on at the park or something, as long as you're leading that interaction with volition. Right?
Yeah.
She will feel that providership. She will feel that masculine leadership. And then it won't matter to her if you bought a $400 bottle of wine or a $15 bottle of wine. It doesn't matter, right? As long as you're in this energy.
Exactly. And what I also really loved about how my husband pursued our dating relationship in the beginning is that he never texted me. Which I just want to pivot to this, because the clients that I'm working with all the time, they're like, this isn't the man for me. Like, we're just not meeting on the same emotional level. And like, I want to tell him my whole world. And I was like, oh, so you want your man to be your girlfriend? Because the men that are out there like texting and texting and texting, you're losing the magic of the first couple of months.
Yes. I also say that, I say for men, I tell that to men, because men, especially the more insecure type, they want to text, which is, in their mind, they're being chivalrous because they think they make her feel safe by texting to show her that they're thinking about her, but they're actually being needy, because underneath this need to text is a need to, I don't want her to forget about me.
Connect.
And I don't want her to, I don't know, think that that I'm bad and ghost me or get mad at me. And I think that when you give that space, you give her the space to kind of, let's say, process the experience herself, and you reserve the connecting and bonding to the place that you're face to face.
Exactly.
Because as I tell people, it's like the phone, until she's your girlfriend, the phone is for setting up dates only. That is it. Thank you.
I approve this message.
Thank you.
I do, because again, it creates a false sense of relationship and emotional connection for the woman, who will project and believe that I have to eradicate my male funnel. And so the woman starts to act like the girlfriend before the man has actually claimed that.
Yes. And the thing is that it's like, well, let's say a little bit of an immature woman might be a little bit neurotic about it, oh, why doesn't he call? But even if she's neurotic about it, that is not something that a man should fear, because even if an immature woman is a bit neurotic and a little bit scared and a little bit anxious about it and doesn't communicate that in a way of like, why don't you call me? Why don't you this? But in the end, she's very anxious to the point that she just reaches out, hey, I want to see how you're doing. This is for the man a good signal of like, okay, she's thinking about you. What you're doing is right. Now is your time to take charge and just book the date.
Yeah. But let me tell you, a woman wouldn't be anxious unless they really have issues and then run, like stop dating them, if you were clear enough in your communication. Because anxiousness comes from what if. Where is this going?
But don't you think if you're clear in your communication and you express, like, you know, like you're clear in your communication, everything is okay. But then there's always this doubt of like, but what if he doesn't like me? But what if he made someone else?
For sure, but take that to your coach.
Okay, no, sure. I'm saying don't dump it on the guy.
Yeah,
but like,
don't bring it to the guy.
Women,
bring it to your coach.
Don't dump it on the guy.
Start filling up your funnel, so you're having multiple dates, so you're not hyper focused on one guy.
Right. Same thing for guys, by the way.
Yeah.
If a guy has several options, he's not in scarcity mentality. He doesn't think, oh no, what if this one doesn't call? Oh no, but I had this one match on Tinder. What if she doesn't call me back? And you sit there and you're biting your nails and she doesn't call you back because it's freaking Tinder, and then you feel like you're a failure. But if you had 3 options, 4 options, it wouldn't matter, because if one is like deciding she's not valuing you enough, that is fine, because there's others who are valuing you. And again, I don't want to go into the note of your value depends on how many women you're dating. That is not the case here, right? But to the point that if you have options, then you're not that hung up on this one option.
Yeah. Again, I can't speak from a male lens, because the majority of individuals that I coach are from the female lens.
Sure.
But I can say, when I find men overly texting, it is coming from a place of insecurity, which is an indication of inner prince energy. Yes. So then they're not in their providership. They're not in their security. Right. Because if a man, like my husband, my now husband, texted me and said, that was a phenomenal date, 30 minutes later after our date, I really want to see you again. How is next Thursday? Is that available on your calendar? It's clear that he wants to see me again. I'm scheduling that on next Thursday. I don't need text from him. Because it's so clear what he wants. I would rather a man after a date text me and go, thank you so much for this evening. I'm so grateful I had an opportunity to know you. I just feel like we're not meant to continue this forward. I would be like, fuck yeah, amazing. Thank you for that clarity. So again, it comes down to
instead of just ghosting you.
Instead of just ghosting you, exactly. It comes down to that clarity. When there's that level of communication there, my whole system relaxes, where I don't need you to keep texting me in between the meetings that you've booked. And if that does bring up stuff for me, it's my job to have a coach or a therapist or some extension of support to help me understand what's being triggered within me, and to work on that outside of the relationship. Because if I'm bringing that stuff into the relationship this early on, it's going to form a pattern of behavior and response that is going to perpetuate through the entire relationship.
And I would just add that I think that for the men out there who might think like, yeah, but women are unclear with their communication and they're being avoidant and they're being like that and they're being like that.
Yes, we are.
Yes, you are. That's exactly the point. But the thing is,
it's not our job, babe. Yeah, it's yours.
Yeah, exactly. Like for a woman who is like so clear in that masculine expression of her emotions, it's a great bonus, I have to say, for a woman is doing that, but at the same time she shouldn't. The man, as the carrier of the torch of the masculine energy, needs to take the responsibility and the leadership and bring that clarity into the communication. It's like, here's what I want to do. I want to take you out. I want I want to book you on my calendar. Bring that order into the feminine chaos, where she will be like, oh, this was such a great date. I don't know how I feel about it. I need to think. I need to process. I need to I need to talk to my friends. Oh, what a lovely date. Is he the one? Is he not the one? I don't know. I'm not sure. Boom, text. How's it going? I had a really great time last week, and I want to see you again. When are you free to get together? This is like, ooh.
Yeah.
He told me what he wants. He told me that he had a good time. I know he's interested. He looks cute. That's awesome. I'm going to say yes to that.
And I can respond from a feminine way of not like, oh, thanks for texting. Can't wait for the date, which is very masculine, to be like, ooh, that's fun that you just texted me. Wow, that gives shivers down my spine.
Right.
Well, now I'm excited to see you. Very different way to respond. So again, we can complement each other's energy so significantly in the dating process, and also use the dating process to refine how we are communicating. Because if a man is able to communicate in that masculine way, I can get into my emotional world because I feel safe to do so. I can express my feelings. I can bring in sensation, in experience, versus like, hey, how are you? How's your day? Great. How's your day? Which happens, it's like, hey, like if the man was like, hey, I've been thinking about you, I want to take you out next week, a feminine response would be like, oh my goodness, your text just made me just put a huge smile on my face. Such a different way to communicate and respond. And you can feel it. You can feel the body go, ooh, there's something here.
It changed so much for me as well. This was a big game changer for me in dating, because I used to be that kind of wishy-washy guy who went like, hey, how you doing? And then she would be like, okay, how are you? And then I would be like, good, how is your day? And then, as you keep doing that shit because you think that you want to warm her up or something, because you don't want to appear like that guy who is like only texting because he wants to get laid or something, which is not the case at all. I realized that while I was doing that thing, is like the back and forth stuff, her answering was getting more and more, there were more gaps between her answering my text, and I never knew why. And simply because, she doesn't need that shit. And it's like, once I realized that when I use the phone with a woman, it's literally logistics.
Yeah.
It's literally logistics. It's like, hey, here's what I feel. Here's what I want to do. Are you in or are you out? You can be a little bit humoristic. There's all kinds of like that. And that's why I don't, all the people who teach texting, who teach all kinds of like, say this to get her this, do this, like pickup lines, text, this is all fucking bullshit. I mean, I give some tips on how to text as a guy to my guys, but again, it's all nuance. It needs to come from the core, from the source, which is
100%.
Know what you want, lead with that volition, live the ethos of what it is that you want to do, and express that in a fun, lighthearted way, and a woman will be happy to follow that.
Yeah. And for all the females that are listening to this that believe that you want a man texting you every single day, I would really ask yourself, do you want your man to be your girlfriend? Because long term, that's gonna sizzle quickly. Like, get a girlfriend, My husband and I still, like, our texts are so boring. It's like, did you feed the dog? And he's still, like, we don't have a robust text. It's why I have my girlfriends. Yeah. Because, I literally talk to my best girlfriends, even though they're not in Berlin, as often as I can when I'm walking the dog. Because he's not there to fulfill that desire within me that goes really deep. Like, we go very deep in different ways.
I hear that. With Bear as well. When Bear's on vacation and stuff, like we barely text, we barely talk, because it's like, okay, she's on vacation. She comes back home. We connect face to face.
Yeah,
that's how it is.
Face to face, exactly.
All right, I have one last question for you.
Okay.
I ask all the guests, and the question is, what advice do you have for someone who is lost, and specifically for men, because most men are listening to this, is like, for a man who finds himself lost, feels like he's about to give up, is in a really, really bad place. What advice do you have for this man?
The first advice is to place yourself somewhere on the earth, whether it's on a mountaintop or somewhere in nature, and really question, am I actually lost, or is this coming from something else? Something deep inside me that is wanting me to feel it, to experience it, to understand it, to love it, to bring it into acceptance. Because when you get quiet enough and when you have the support of nature around you, you'll recognize that even if there is an aspect of your psychology, a part of yourself that feels lost, it's not the full truth of who you are. And if you can create enough space between that which you're currently identified as, aka lost, and the truth that there's something else beyond that, then you can start to work with it and think, versus thinking that you have to be against it, or that you need to eradicate it or erase it or get rid of it or release it. Like, no. If you're feeling that, if there's a feeling, that's a beautiful aspect of who you are and your psychology, and that's wanting you to bring in some sort of divine father figure to it. Yeah.
Feeling is not weakness, gentlemen. Feeling is not weakness. Before we wrap up, why don't you tell the audience, because you mostly work with coaches, but knowing you and knowing what you do, you don't work with coaches, but you work with the humans that are the coaches.
Yes.
Because in the end, right, their business is who they are. And if they have unclarities or prince energies or princess energies in them, their business will be a reflection of that. So if people want to work with you, if people want to know about you, learn about your stuff, where can they find you? Of course, I'll have links in the show notes, but yeah, how can people find you?
Instagram is the easiest way to connect with me and like slide into my DMs, not in a creepy way, please, but to start a conversation. I am one of those individuals that it's really important for me to build relationship and to build foundation and safety, because that's how we actually create resolution in the world of trauma. We can't do that without safety and the establishment of relationship. So people that come into my world, it is important for me to already build that relationship via Instagram, via DMs, and you're not going to be speaking to my assistant or a bot. Like, it's actually me in there. And I love that level of intimacy that I provide. So the best place to connect with me is definitely Instagram. You'll notice everything that's coming out. I also have a freebie, How You Date is How You Do Business. So if the men have also downloaded it, you can learn a lot about women in that freebie.
Totally agree.
But it's a great quiz and checklist to kind of see where your energies are and to start to do some self-inquiry work to move some of the emotions through the body and come into a deeper resonance of awareness of who you are and acceptance of where you are, because that's how we actually create change, when we're no longer believing we need to be someone or somewhere else, but we can fully accept this is who I am right now and that's okay, and this is where I am and that's okay, and this is the direction I'm going in.
Yes, 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 and yes to that. You hear that, people? You don't have to change who you are. You just have to find something that is already inside you, and you just have to get out of your own way, find that thing, and then you will be celebrated by others as well. Cari, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I would love to have you again on the show.
Yeah, happily.
Yeah, for all the rest of the guys who want to catch up with us, as I said, I'm going to leave the show notes to Cari's Instagram here. If you want to catch up with me, feel free to do so. I'm also a big fan of answering people's DMs instead of installing bots on my Instagram. And yeah, that's it. Guys, thank you so much. I wish you a beautiful, beautiful day, and see you guys on the next episode.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao. Thank you for listening to my conversation with Carrie. I have to say, not only did this conversation really spark my soul, but I'm proud to say that I had this conversation with a good friend. Being friends with Carrie and her husband in the past few years have been really amazing to me. Myself and Bea have been sharing a lot of amazing adventures with them, laughs, deep talks, and just a great experience of what it is to be a small and loving community, even when it's inside of a city. I want to leave you with an ancient Israeli proverb that says, "Emor li mi chaverecha ve'omar lecha mi ata." It means, tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. Thank you for listening.